Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kdamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapad Shri Gurun Vaishnavamascha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Rughunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadavaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Rughunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadavaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamascha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prijabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarupyascha Kripa Sindhyuvevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashtitya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, so Hare Krishna everyone, thank you for joining. So I'm Bhaja Govindam Das. I'm taking class today. I think Brajasundar Prabhu mentioned it last week. So yeah, it'll be nice if devotees can put their cameras on so then I can have an audience, but that's fine. Would anybody like to volunteer to read? If you could just put your hands up. And okay, so Hemi Gupta Mataji, if you'd like to start reading.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Week 13, overview of chapter 3.24, the renunciation of Kardama Muni. Recalling the words of Lord Vishnu, the merciful sage Kardam replied as follows to Swambhu Manu's praiseworthy daughter Devhuti, who was speaking words full of renunciation. The sage said, "Do not be disappointed with yourself, O princess. You are actually praiseworthy. The infallible Supreme Personality of Godhead will shortly enter your womb as your son. You have undertaken sacred vows. God will bless you. Hence you should worship the Lord with great faith through sensory control, religious observances, austerities, and gifts of your money in charity. The personality of Godhead being worshipped by you will spread my name and fame. He will vanquish the knot of your heart by becoming your son and teaching knowledge of Brahman." Sri Maitreya said Devhuti was fully faithful and respectful towards the direction of her husband Kardam, who was one of the Prajapatis or generators of human beings in the universe. O great sage, she thus began to worship the master of the universe, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in everyone's heart. After many, many years, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Madhusudana, the killer of the demon Madhu, having entered the semen of Kardam, appeared in Devhuti just as fire comes from wood in a sacrifice. At the time of his descent on earth, demigods in the form of raining clouds sounded musical instruments in the sky. The celestial musicians, the Gandharvas, sang the glories of the Lord, while celestial dancing girls known as Apsaras danced in joyful ecstasy. At the time of the Lord's appearance, the demigods flying freely in the sky showered flowers, all the directions, all the waters, and everyone's mind became very satisfied. Brahma, the firstborn living being, went along with Marichi and other sages to the place of Kardama's hermitage, which was surrounded by the river Saraswati, independent in acquiring. Saraswati. Maitreya continued, "O killer of the enemy, the unborn Lord Brahma, who is almost independent in acquiring knowledge, could understand that a portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his quality of pure existence, had appeared in the womb of Devhuti just to explain the complete state of knowledge known as Sankhya Yoga. After worshipping the Supreme Lord with gladdened senses and a pure uh, heart for his intended activities as an incarnation, Brahma spoke as follows to Kardam and Devhuti.
Thank you, Mataji. I think somebody else has their hand up. If sorry, they'd like to continue. Sir Mataji.
Prabhuji, you want me to continue or somebody is going to?
Lord Brahma said, "My dear son Kardama, since you have completely accepted my instructions without duplicity, showing them proper respect, you have worshipped me properly. Whatever instructions you took from me, you have carried out, and thereby you have honored me. Sons ought to render service to their father exactly to this extent. One should obey the command of his father or spiritual master with due deference, saying, Yes, sir. Lord Brahma then placed Kadama Muni's 9 daughters, saying, All your thin-waisted daughters are certainly very chaste. I'm sure they will increase this creation by I don't know, I have one. To say all thin-waisted daughters are certainly very chaste. I'm sure they will increase this creation by their own descendants in various ways. Therefore, today, please give away your daughters to the foremost of sages with due regard for the girls' temperaments and likings, and thereby spread your fame all over the universe. O Kadama, I know that the original Supreme Personality of Godhead has now appeared as an incarnation by his internal energy. He is the bestower of all that is desired by the living entities, and he has now assumed the body of Kapila Muni. By mystic yoga and the practical application of knowledge from the scriptures, Kapila Muni, who is characterized by his golden hair, his eyes just like lotus petal, and his lotus feet, which bears the marks of the lotus flowers, will uproot the deep-rooted desire for work in this material world. Lord Brahma then told Devahuti, My dear daughter of Manu, the same personality of Godhead who killed the demon Kaitaba is now within your womb. He will cut off all the knots of your ignorance and doubt. Then he will travel all over the world. Your son will be the head of all perfected souls. He will be approved by the acharyas, expert in disseminating real knowledge, and among the people he will be celebrated by the name Kapila as the son of Devahuti. He will increase your fame. Someone else can read, I think. Apparently there's an echo in my.
Yeah. Matthew, would you like to continue? Sir Matthew, would you like to continue?
Sure, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Sri Maitreya said, after thus speaking to Kardama Muni and his wife Devahuti, Lord Brahma, the creator of the universe, who is also known as Hamsa, went back to the highest of the 3 planetary systems on his swan carrier with the 4 Kumaras and Narada. O Vidura, after the departure of Brahma, Kardama Muni, having been ordered by Brahma, handed over his 9 daughters as instructed to the 9 great sages who created the population of the world. Kardama Muni handed over his daughter Kala to Marichi and another daughter Anusuya to Atri. He delivered Sharada to Angira and Haivibhu to Pulatsya. He delivered Gati to Pulaha and the Chasta Kriya to Kratu, Khayati to Bhrugu and Arundhati to Vasishtha. He delivered Shanti to Atharva because of Shanti. Sacrificial ceremonies are well performed. Thus he got the foremost Brahmanas married and he maintained them along with their wives. Thus married the sages took leave of Kardama and departed full of joy, each of his own hermitage, O Vidura. Can I continue?
Yeah.
When Kardama Muni understood that the Supreme Personality of Godhead the chief of all the demigods, Vishnu has descended. Kardama approached him in a scheduled place, offered obeisances, and spoke as follows. Kardama Muni said, "Oh, after a long time, the demigods of this universe have become pleased with the suffering souls who are in material entanglement because of their own misdeeds. After many births, mature yogis, by complete trance in yoga, endeavor in scheduled places to see the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, Personality of Godhead, not considering the negligence of ordinary householders like us. That very same Supreme Personality of Godhead appears in our home just to support his devotees. Kardama Muni said, "You, O my dear Lord, who are always increasing the honor of your devotees, have descended in my home just to fulfill your word and disseminate the process of real knowledge. My dear Lord, although you have no material form, you have your own innumerable forms. They truly are your transcendental forms, which are pleasing to your devotees. My dear Lord, your lotus feet are the reservoir that always deserves to receive no, worshipful homage from all great sages eager to understand the absolute truth. You are full in opulence, renunciation, transcendental fame, knowledge, strength, and beauty. And therefore I surrender myself unto your lotus feet. I surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, descended in the form of Kapila, who is independently powerful and transcendental, who is the Supreme Person and the Lord of the sum total of matter and the element of time, who is the full cognizant maintainer of all the universes under the three modes of material nature, and who absorbs the material manifestations after their dissolution. Today I have something to ask from you, who are the Lord of all living entities. Since I have now been liberated by your form, my debts to my father, and since all my desires are fulfilled, I wish to accept the order of an it, what is that, Prabhu? Itinerant mendicant. Renouncing this family life, I wish to wander about free from lamentation, thinking always of you in my heart.
Thank you.
Hare
Rashna
Krishna.
Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Kapila said, "Whatever I speak, whether directly or in the scriptures, is authoritative in all respects for the people of the world. O Muni, because I told you before that I would become your son, I have descended to fulfill this truth. My appearance in this world is specially to explain the philosophy of Sankhya, which is highly esteemed for self-realization by those desiring freedom from the entanglement of unnecessary material desires. This path of self-realization, which is difficult to understand, has now been lost in the course of time. Please know that I have assumed this body of Kapila to introduce and explain this philosophy to human society again. Now being sanctioned by me, go as you desire, surrendering all your activities to me, conquering insurmountable death, worship me for eternal life. In your own heart, through your intellect, you will always see me, the supreme self-effulgent soul, dwelling within the hearts of all living entities. Thus you will achieve the state of eternal life, free from all lamentation and fear. I shall also describe the sublime knowledge, which is the door to spiritual life, to my mother, so that she also can attain perfection and self-realization, ending all reactions to fruitive activities. Thus, she also will be freed from all material fear. Should I continue? Sri
Sure.
Maitreya said, thus when Kardama Muni, the progenitor of human society, was spoken to in fullness by his son Kapila, he circumambulated him, and with a good pacified mind, he at once left for the forest. The sage Kardama accepted silence as a vow in order to think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and take shelter of him exclusively. Without association, he traveled over the surface of the globe as a sannyasi, devoid of any relationship with fire or shelter. He fixed his mind upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Parabrahman,
who is beyond cause and effect, who manifests the three modes of material nature, who is beyond those three modes, and who is perceived only through unfailing devotional service. Thus, he gradually became unaffected by the false ego of material identity and became free from material affection. Undisturbed, equal to everyone, and without duality, he could indeed see himself also. His mind was turned inward and was perfectly calm, like an ocean unagitated by waves. He thus became liberated from conditioned life and became self-situated in transcendental devotional service to the personality of Godhead Vasudeva, the omniscient supersoul within everyone. He began to see that the supreme personality of Godhead is seated in everyone's heart and that everyone is existing on him because he is the supersoul of everyone. Freed from all hatred and desire, Kardama Muni, being equal to everyone because of discharging uncontaminated devotional service, ultimately attained the path back to Godhead.
Jay, thank you everyone for reading. Jay, so before we start today's chapter, I think it's worth we just recap the story of Kardama Muni thus far, right? So can anyone tell me which chapter the story of Kardama Muni actually starts? Kardama Muni and Devahuti. Where do we start the story from? Just to recap. 21? Yes, Canto 3, 20, chapter 21. So what do we understand? What do we know that comes up in chapter 21? So what actually takes place? Rashna Mataji?
Yes, Swayambhu Manu brings his daughter Devahuti to Kardama Muni, who is meditating, and he has a desire that he wants to marry, even though he's completely renounced, and yet he has this desire, and the Lord knows his desire. And so Swayambhu Manu brings and his wife Saturupa, they bring their daughter Devahuti to Kardama Muni for him to be married to her as an ideal wife,
But just before then, in chapter 21, we find that actually Brahma has approached Kardama Muni to say, okay, what I need from you, this is my instruction to you, that you beget children. So before Swayambhu Manu comes with his daughter, with his wife to Kardama Muni's ashram, what actually happens is Brahma has this conversation with Kardama Muni, and Kardama Muni then goes and performs austerities, which then obviously leads to this Supreme Lord Krishna coming to Kardama Muni and going, yeah, I know what you want, and it's all already arranged. And then, as Rachana mentioned, Swayambhu Manu comes, and then the marriage proposal comes forward as well. But there's something specific that Swayambhu Manu sort of puts a condition, right, in terms of the marriage. Does anybody remember what condition he puts forward for the marriage?
Kardama Muni said that he will renounce after begetting children.
Yeah, so he says that he will happily get married to Devahuti if after begetting children, then he can just leave and focus fully on devotional service. Okay, so now the marriage has taken place. Swayambhu Manu has gone back with his wife, and it's described at the end of chapter 32 that Swayambhu Manu and his wife actually have a very spiritual life, right? They're reading, they're engaged in hearing, contemplating, and then writing down and chanting about the pastimes of the Lord. So then we come to chapter 33, and what actually takes place in chapter 33? So the last week's session.
Chapter 23.
So
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, we see that upon seeing his wife doing so much of service to him, he feels pity on her and he wants to take her for they want to beget children, so he creates a big palace which is also flying, like an airplane, and then he asks us to have a bath in the about the name of the lake, and then she comes, like beautifully dressed, and then they travel around the universe basically. She gets 9 daughters. That was the end of the chapter.
Yeah, so sorry, Mataji, you still got the echo in the background. It's just feedback, like whatever we're discussing in the Zoom keeps coming back, but just for everyone's benefit. Yeah, so just before the act of Swayambhuva Manu and Devahuti going and creating the palace, the mystic palace, what Swayambhuva Manu wants to do is reciprocate with the love and the devotion that Devahuti has put forward towards him. So what he does is he wants to give the best that he's got, and the best he's got is greater than begetting children, is greater than any material, any sort of material opulence. So he wants to actually give Devahuti the transcendental vision, the wisdom that he's attained, so that Devahuti can also perfect her life. But Devahuti wasn't quite ready yet, we see, and that's why she desires to still have children, right? And then, yeah, as Mataji mentioned, then what happens is that they create the palace in the sky. Devahuti's princess qualities, her paraphernalia, everything is bestowed upon her by Kardama Muni's mystic powers. And then they're enjoying for many, many years. It's described, and then at the end, the 9 daughters come. And just at the end of the chapter, we hear how, well, we read how Kardama Muni is just about to leave, as per the original condition. He's ready to leave. He's ready to go, okay, the daughters are here now. I'm ready to renounce. I can leave. But what does Devahuti do at the very end?
She says, who will I take shelter of? The daughters will be married off to the sages, so I'll be left alone, and I need someone to guide me in the, perfecting my life.
Yeah, so Devahuti is putting forward her lamentation, right? What situation will she be left in? And Kardama Muni is now left, at the end of that chapter, in chapter 23, Kardama Muni is now left to reply and respond. So that's where we start today's class, chapter 24. And specifically for this chapter, the theme that I'm going to really pick on is the act of honoring spiritual instructions. Throughout this chapter, as we read, there's many times where Brahma or Devahuti, they've all kind of either put forward some spiritual instructions or they've taken on spiritual instructions. So we'll focus on how we as practicing devotees can really learn how to honor the spiritual instructions as well. And what I like to do when I'm going through the chapters, and especially like if I'm summarizing the chapters, then I like to kind of break it out into different sections. So for this chapter, I've kind of got 5 sections that I break it out into, right? So verses 1 to 4 is the first one. So that's Kardama Muni instructing Devahuti. Then the second section is the appearance of Lord Kapila. So that's verses 5 to 9. Then verses 10 to 25 is where Brahma's come onto the scene, and now and then we hear about Brahma's glorification and Brahma's instructions. Then the 4th section we discuss is about the conversation between Lord Kapila and Kardama Muni, and that's verses 26 to 40. And then the last section, which we very nicely heard, was how Kardama Muni renounced and attained the spiritual world, right? Which is verses 41 to 47. So they're all linked, but I just like to break it down so then we can understand what we're focusing on for each of the different sections. So when we start the chapter, then obviously chapter 23, we ended with Devahuti's lamentation. Who will she take shelter of? So at the start of this chapter, we hear that Kardama Muni is now replying and responding to that. And he responds by saying, and trying to appease Devahuti by saying that actually she's very fortunate. she's very fortunate because she's going to attain the Supreme Lord in her womb, right? Very, very soon. And then he also gives her the process. He also guides her on how to attain that mercy. And he says specifically, through taking shelter of the Lord by sense control, practicing religious rules and regulations, austerity, and charity. He lists out 4 things for Devahuti to do for the Supreme Lord to become pleased with her. So we can take a learning from this straight away, actually, right? When we're practicing devotional life, when we're practicing anything and we want to attain some sort of mercy, we want to please the Lord, then we need to know how to do this, right? Kardama Muni has shown Devahuti that, well, told her, do these things and the Lord will be pleased. And we can understand that this ultimately comes to 2 things. One is following the Lord's instructions. And the second is following in the footsteps of those devotees who are very dear to the Lord. So how can we follow the Lord's instructions? Well, one of our primary, the foundational books that we have, scriptures that we have, is the Bhagavad Gita, which is the Lord's Vani itself, right? The Bhagavad Gita is the song of the Lord. And in the Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 16, which describes the divine and demoniac qualities, in the very first verse, Krishna actually tells Arjuna certain qualities that are associated to what would please him. He says, Abhayam sattvasam shuddhir jnana yoga vivastiti dhanam damascha yajnascha svadhyastapa arjavam. So he says, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of austerity, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity and simplicity, right? So it's described that these are bhavanti sampadam devim, right? Abhajatasya bharata. These are described as the devim, or the transcendental qualities that belong to those who have a divine nature, to godly men. And we see that actually the items that Kardama Muni has mentioned, right? What were they? They were sense control, practicing rules and regulations, austerities and charity, right? All these are already encompassed by the first verse of chapter 16 of Bhagavad Gita. And these all belong to divine qualities. So we can see that actually what Kardama Muni has done here is that he's given Devahuti a very simple version of what she needs to do to please the Lord. And so we can see that actually as devotees, we also want to please the Lord. So we also should make it a part of our life to endeavor towards building and actually growing in these qualities as well. Many of us, are probably studying very, very nicely. I was speaking to Brajasundar Prabhu yesterday, how everybody on this call is involved in the reading of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So it's very nice. But then we can also look at the other qualities, like, are we performing some sort of charity? Are we performing some austerities? At least in UK, Ekadashi is tomorrow. It might be today or on Tuesday for those in India. But we're performing the Ekadashi Vrat to whatever capacity our body allows us. So we can meditate on these. In the purport also, Srila Prabhupada says that without austerity and penance, and without sacrificing one's riches, one cannot achieve the mercy of the Supreme Lord. So Prabhupada's also saying that actually, even as devotees, we also should perform some austerity, perform some sacrifices, perform some charity, right? Because without doing things that Krishna likes, without doing things that pleases Krishna, to attain Krishna's mercy is actually very, very difficult, if not very near impossible. So then we move on in the chapter, in verse 4, where Kardama Muni is telling Devahuti about how the Supreme Lord will come and cut off all of her material attachments. And specifically then he says that the Supreme Lord will come to spread Kardama Muni's glories. In the Brahma Samhita, it's mentioned that Krishna is described as Anadir Adir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam, right? It's described that he's the origin of everything. He has no other origin. And Sarvakarana Karanam, right? He's the cause, he's the primary cause of all causes. So just from those two lines, we can understand that the Lord actually can't have parents, right? If he's the original cause, if he's the origin of everything, then how can he have parents? And yet, Kardama Muni is saying here that the Lord will come to spread Kardama Muni's glories. So how can we understand this? The Lord doesn't have parents like how we perceive parents, right? But what the Lord does is that he sees the love, the devotion, and the devotional service that the devotees perform. And he, just to please the devotees and reciprocate with that love, he chooses to become their child. And what happens when a child is born, right? Now, we can see even today, many of us have probably witnessed or have families or relatives that we go to, and a child is born and they're probably maybe just a couple of years old even. And if we see some good qualities in them, we praise them so much, like, oh, wow, your son is so nice. You've cultivated him, you've grown him so nicely, right? Oftentimes we speak to the parents and go, glorify the parents because the son is such a is so worthy of being glorified. And now imagine if the Supreme Lord is one's son, right? We glorify children of this world because we see some good qualities in them. And then in return, we glorify the parents for raising them so nicely. But imagine if the Supreme Lord is one's son, then how much more glorification would there be for the parents, right? That, oh, wow, the Supreme Lord came and became your child. And even if there are people who don't recognize the child as the Supreme Lord, they recognize so many good qualities that the parents will automatically just get recognition and glorification for it. So then we come to the second section, the appearance of Lord Kapila. And we see in verse 5 that Devahuti faithfully follows the instructions that Kardama Muni has put to her, right? She doesn't think, okay, I don't want to do this, but he's told me, he's my husband, I have to do this. She's faithfully followed. And what she's showing here is actually not entirely to do with the husband and wife relationship. In fact, it's much deeper than that. It's actually the relationship between a spiritual master, guru, and a student, a disciple, right? And this is the first of many in this chapter that we'll see, right? When we think of a spiritual master, what usually comes to everybody's mind when we think of a guru? Let's have like three answers, three phrases that come to people's mind.
Heavy.
Heavy. Anyone else?
That we have to surrender to the Guru
Surrender to
submissively.
the guru. Submissive. Okay. What about qualities of the guru itself? Like, what do we think a guru should look like, behave like anything like this?
He is the representative of the Supreme Lord.
Sorry?
He is the representative of the Supreme Lord.
Representative of Supreme Lord. Yeah. So oftentimes you'll also see a guru, especially if we're beginning in our journey, we'll see a guru as somebody who is a sannyasi often, right? Somebody who's accepted saffron robes many times. But sometimes we might think like that, oh, okay, they're in saffron, so there must be a guru, there must be an elevated guru. But actually, when we look at, as devotees have mentioned, when we look at the scriptures, the definition of a guru is, as one of the devotees mentioned, is that they're surrendered, they're completely in one with the Supreme Lord, right? They're advanced in spiritual knowledge. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's mentioned, Kiba Vipra Kiba Nyasi Shudra Kena Nae Yai Krishna Tattva Veta Se Guru Hoye. It's described that it doesn't matter whether one is a Brahmana. It doesn't matter whether one is a sannyasi. It doesn't matter whether one is a Shudra. Right? In order to be a spiritual master, what's important is Yai Krishna Tattva Veta. It's whether they have the knowledge, the science of Krishna. And even in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that this is the process of spiritual realization. One has to receive instruction from a bona fide spiritual master. Kardama Muni was Devahuti's husband, but because he instructed her on how to achieve spiritual perfection, he naturally became her spiritual master also. So it's not that a guru is just a Diksha guru, one who we've taken initiation from. Like I see many on this call have, a dasa or dasi at the end of their name. So they've been officially initiated into the movement. But actually, a guru is one who we also accept shiksha from, right? Many of us are on this call because we have some shiksha gurus in our life, because we're interested in spiritual growth, and so we've connected with senior devotees who we're taking spiritual knowledge from, whether that's locally, online, or anything. So in this case, Kardama Muni was advanced in spiritual knowledge, and we know that and hear that throughout the whole section of Kardama Muni's renunciation. And so he was able to instruct Devahuti on transcendental science. And it's very interesting because just in the last chapter, we found that when Kardama Muni wanted to reciprocate with the love, with the devotion that Devahuti had, she wasn't ready to take it then. She wanted children. But then now after the children are born and now he's ready to renounce everything, now he's just presented the spiritual knowledge to her. Right? And she's accepted it. She's taken it on. She hasn't gone, yes, but this, but that. She's just taken it on because she's now ready for it. And actually, we can see throughout the Bhagavatam and other scriptures that we have that it's quite common for a husband, especially husbands who are very elevated in spiritual life, for them to become the guru or to impart spiritual knowledge to their wife. We see it also, and Prabhupada mentions in the purport, that it's also the case in Shiva and Parvati, right? Shiva is the spiritual master, the guru of Parvati. And we see that many times in many different scriptures. And when we think of household life in general, we understand that there's a Grihastha ashram, right? The idea of the Grihastha ashram, the marriage ashram, is that the whole householder is engaged and engaging each other in cultivating spiritual knowledge and making advancement by executing the religious duties, the principles perfectly. The husband engages the wife engages the children, everybody's engaged and everybody's engaging each other. And this actually falls very heavily on the duty and responsibility of a husband. Because traditionally speaking, what role does the husband play? What role does the father play? They're usually the protectors, right? They usually are the ones, obviously nowadays many Matajis are also working, which is very nice to support the family. But traditionally speaking, it's the husband that brings the protection, the love, that side of the care, the welfare. But that protection is not just on the bodily or the mental platform. Actually, they're responsible for the protection of the spiritual well-being of the family also. So then we go on to hear about the glorious appearance of the Lord, right? The different attributes. And specifically in verse 6, there's a specific analogy that's given of the Lord's appearance, which is just as fire comes from wood in a sacrifice. So the Lord has appeared just as fire comes from wood in a sacrifice. What does this mean? So when we understand the Lord, and if we go back to one of the original conversations we just had, the Lord chooses to appear, chooses to become a child of his devotees. So he doesn't take birth like we do. But actually, as we know, the Lord is situated in the heart of everyone as well, as a super soul. So the analogy given here, just as fire comes from wood in a sacrifice, the idea is that within the wood, there's the attribute, the fiery attribute already present. But what happens is that it becomes externally manifest. So in the same way with Devahuti and Kardama Muni, the Lord didn't take birth through Devahuti and Kardama Muni, but actually he just externally manifested himself through the super soul of their hearts. So then we see that, okay, the Lord's just appeared and now Brahma's come onto the scene, right? So we go into the third section, where Brahma is glorifying and instructing Kardama Muni and Devahuti. So Brahma comes onto the scene with his other children, like Narada Muni, the four Kumaras, the sages, etc. And he starts to praise Kardama Muni and Devahuti. Why is he praising them? Because, as we mentioned before, when the sun is so glorious, when the Lord has just appeared as a sun, the parents are worthy of being glorified. And that's exactly what Brahma is doing here. He's glorifying the parents of the Supreme Lord because they were such great devotees that they achieved the Lord as their son. And then in verse 12, Brahma says, Tvayame pachitastata kalpita nivyalikata yanme sangrihe vakyam bhavan manadamanayan. My dear Lord, my dear son, Kardama, since you have completely accepted my instructions without duplicity, showing them proper respect, you have worshipped me properly. Whatever instructions you took from me, you have carried out, and thereby you have honored me. And then in verse 13, he elaborates further. Sons ought to render service to their father exactly to this extent. One should obey the command of his father or spiritual master with due deference, saying, yes, sir. What Brahma has just spoken to Kardama Muni about is very similar to what Kardama Muni was speaking to Devahuti about, and what we discussed about how Devahuti just took the instruction of Kardama Muni and executed it perfectly. Brahma is glorifying Kardama Muni here because Kardama Muni took the instruction of go and beget children, and he's done that perfectly. He didn't go, yes, but if this, or but what about this? He just took the instruction and executed it perfectly. So Kardama Muni here is being praised for being a perfect disciple. When we look throughout the ISKCON movement, you know, many of us are connected to various centers. And even if we look at other movements, other religious institutes who have a concept of a guru, then quite often we see that the guru is so elaborately decorated, so elaborately worshipped, especially in Vyas Puja days, for example. You know, what do? We often have a very pomp sort of function to celebrate the appearance day of the Acharya or of the Guru. And if they're no longer present with us, then we also celebrate their disappearance day in just as much pomp. And especially, I think many of us who are initiated on this call will probably be able to relate to this, is many times we'll be like, yes, I'm so fortunate to be the disciple of so-and-so Guru, right? Of His Holiness XYZ Swami. And oftentimes we think that just by these sorts of praised glorifications of the Guru, of the spiritual master, we're connecting with them, we're actually pleasing them. We're developing our relationship with the Guru by constantly remembering how great they are and glorifying them at every opportunity. And we think that by doing that, we're showing our love to the Guru. No doubt, we definitely are. But here, Brahma is telling us through his message to Kardama Muni what that perfect disciple is like. He says, whatever instructions you took from me, you have carried out, and thereby you have honored me. So he's telling us that the real way to show our real love to the Guru, is by actually taking the instructions that we get from the Guru and carrying them out completely. And this aspect of that relationship is actually very well established in the Bhagavad Gita also. Very famous verse. Tadvati panipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanyam jnaninas tattvadarshina. In chapter 4, said, just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. All right, so two things are described. So the guru-disciple relationship is primarily based on these two things, on submissive inquiry and rendering service. And when we think about serving the spiritual master, then what greater service than following the instructions of the spiritual master? If the Guru has told us to do something, and we think that we will please them by doing something else, then we know that actually the Guru, it might please the Guru because what we've done might be of benefit to the movement, to the mission of the Guru. But what would please the Guru the most is if we follow their instruction. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, Brahma knew well that Kardama Muni exactly carried out the instructions received from him, and that he actually honored his spiritual master. To honor the spiritual master means to carry out his instructions word for word. So when we think of the Guru-disciple relationship, we can see that just from this section of the Bhagavatam, we can understand that a real disciple is not one who necessarily makes a show of his relationship with his Guru. They may or may not, according to their means, they'll definitely do as much as they can, but they may or may not be the one who has the most elaborate Vyasa Puja offering. They may or may not decorate the altar with, spending days of decorations. They'll try their best because that is one way to show their love. But the one thing that they definitely have is that they carry the instructions of the Guru in their heart. And when they carry it in their heart, they execute it perfectly also. In Canto 9, actually, there's multiple degrees or multiple levels of disciples described, right? In the story of Yayati and Devayani, right? I won't go through the story now, but there's a verse where Yayati's youngest son is speaking to Yayati to explain what his mood should be like as a son. He says, Uttamash chintitam kuryat, proktakaritu madhyama, addhamo shadaya kuryat, akartot charitam pituhu. Uttamash chintitam kuryat. He's explaining that a first-class son or a first-class disciple is one who meditates, who actually anticipates, there's a chintitam, meditates and anticipates what the Guru wants and acts according to it. So this disciple has understood the heart of the Guru and acts according to the desire of the Guru without the Guru even telling them. Right? That's a first-class disciple. Then Proktakaritu Madhyama, a second-class disciple, is one who is very sincere, who's very serious about spiritual life. But they require the instructions of the Guru because they haven't quite understood exactly how the Guru would want things to be done. And that's okay, that's the second class. So they act according to the instructions. They've just received an instruction from the Guru, they'll happily go and do it, whatever it takes. And then a third class is described as one who may still be very sincere and serious, but they have their own desires still mixed. The Guru's just told them to do something, but they're hesitant. They're like, but I don't want to do that. You know, maybe the Guru's just told you to go and do some preaching somewhere, you know, pack your bags and go to a center and preach. But they don't want to do that. They're very tied to what they want to do. But because the Guru has told him or her, they'll do it. They'll do it dutifully as opposed to because they want to. And oftentimes they may have some grudge about it as well. Like, oh, I don't want to do this, but the Guru's told me, so I have to do it. And then the lowest class disciple is described as Uchuritam. It's described as the stool of the Guru, because they don't do what they've been told to do. Even if the Guru's told them to do a task, even if the Guru's instructed them that I want you to do this, the disciple would be like, no, you know, I don't want to do this. I'm not going to listen. I'm going to do what I want. So we can see what sort of degree we're at. Of course, one who has understood the heart of the Guru is the topmost, but it's also the most difficult to attain. It takes many, many years to even understand the heart of the Guru, let alone act according to it. But at the very least, we can aim to have that firm faith in the Guru, such that if the Guru has instructed us something, if Prabhupada, through his lectures, we hear that he's telling us something, then we just act according to it, wholeheartedly. And when we look at Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's comment in our chapter of the Bhagavatam, he comments, one should accept the instruction of the spiritual master as one's life and soul. Whether one is liberated or not liberated, one should execute the instruction of the spiritual master with great faith. So even our acharyas are saying that it doesn't even matter whether you're a liberated soul. You still follow and you still keep the instructions of your Guru as the forefront of your life. You make it your life and soul. At the start of this week, we celebrated the disappearance day of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He's the spiritual master of Srila Prabhupada, as many of us know and are aware. And we see in that relationship between Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur that there were just like two instructions that were given to Prabhupada. One was to preach in English. He wanted Prabhupada to go to the Western world and preach in English. And the second was that whenever you get money, print books. So when we look at Prabhupada's life, even before he came to the West, we can appreciate and take inspiration from what Prabhupada has done. Even during his family life days, right? During his Grihastha ashram days, what did he do? When he had any opportunity to preach, he was in India at this time, but instead of preaching in Hindi or in any other Indian language, he chose to preach in English because he was preparing himself. He took that instruction to his heart and made it his mission to always prepare himself. He wasn't ready to go out to the West then, but he was preparing himself. My spiritual master has told me to do this. How can I meditate and prepare myself to go and do it someday? And we know that whenever he could, whenever he got money, despite all the ups and downs with his business, he'd always try to dedicate time and money to printing books. And then when we look at his disciples, Prabhupada's disciples, many of our ISKCON sannyasis, senior devotees, right? Many of our gurus, spiritual masters still present today, and even those that have left their bodies. If we look at all the achievements they have made within the ISKCON world so far, actually, if we trace it back, we can see that many of it comes from instructions that Srila Prabhupada has given to them. Like one very, very key one that comes to my mind is the Maharaj's name actually slips my mind right now. But yeah, he's very famous. He has like many, many thousands of disciples. But one of the instructions he received by Srila Prabhupada was to go out and make disciples, right? And he's done that. And I have a close friend in the UK who is a disciple of them. And she was telling me how actually, even though he has thousands of disciples, he has a personal relationship with each and every one of them. Such empowerment is received by following the instructions of the spiritual master. I was listening to a class on Canto 4 actually, so Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 4, chapter 28, verse 34. And when Maharaj was going through the purport, it just really struck out, and I think it's quite relevant. So I'd just like to read that as well. Just as in the Vanaprastha stage, the wife follows the husband, similarly, when the spiritual master retires for Nirjan Bhajan, some of his advanced devotees follow him and engage in his personal service. In other words, those who are very fond of family life should come forward in the service of the spiritual master and abandon so-called happiness afforded by society, friendship, and love. A verse by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his Gurvashtaka is significant in this regard. Yasya prasadad bhagavat prasada. A disciple should always remember that by serving the spiritual master, he can easily advance in Krishna consciousness. So repeat, a disciple should always remember that by serving the spiritual master, he can easily advance in Krishna consciousness. Just by serving the spiritual master, we can advance. All the scriptures recommend that it is by pleasing the spiritual master and serving him directly that one can attain the highest perfectional stage of devotional service. So we can see the emphasis that serving and honoring the instructions of the spiritual master has. And even in the purport of verse 13 of today's chapter, the last few lines of the purport, it's mentioned that this is confirmed in the Upanishads. The import of Vedic instruction is revealed automatically only to one who has implicit faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead and in his spiritual master. One may be materially considered an illiterate man, somebody who can't read or write. But if he has faith in the spiritual master, as well as in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then the meaning of scriptural revelation is immediately manifested before him. We could be somebody who doesn't know how to read or write, who doesn't know how to pick up a book the right way around. But if we have that implicit faith, that firm conviction that my guru knows best, that Krishna knows best, and we act according to what they tell us, with that firm faith, then what's it saying here? That the Upanishads are saying that actually the meaning of scriptural revelation is immediately manifested to him. We could spend our entire life studying the scriptures, studying the Bhagavatam, without faith in the Guru, without faith in Krishna, and nothing will be revealed to us. But we could be somebody who can't even read one letter of the scriptures, but by just having firm faith and conviction in the Guru, in Krishna, the essence of all the scriptures will be known to us. And that's the power of having that firm faith in the Guru. So if we want to please the Guru, if we want to honor the Guru, right? If we want Krishna's mercy to be bestowed on us, such that the essence of all the scriptures is manifested, is revealed to us, then we have to make it a point to accept the instructions of the spiritual master. And the spiritual master could be a Shiksha or a Diksha Guru, but we have to make the instructions our life and soul. And that's one of the key secrets to actually advancing Krishna consciousness. We might not be ready to mold our life straight away, right? Like maybe we've just given birth to a young child and the Guru's just gone, oh, go, leave your place, go to this other country and set up. Might be difficult for us, or maybe there's some underlying desires that are still present. That's okay. But what we should do is recognize that this is the instruction given to me. I'm not ready yet to accept it with firm faith and just go with it. And in that way, we should meditate on it daily, that, okay, I'm not ready, but this is the instruction my guru has given. What can I do today to take a step closer towards that instruction? What can I do to slowly but surely attain that position where I can follow the instruction perfectly? So bit by bit, we can practice. So as we move on in the story of Kardama Muni, then we see that Brahma's just praised also the 9 daughters that Kardama Muni and Devahuti have had. And he requests and he instructs actually Kardama Muni to get them married to the sages. And as we know in chapter 21, that actually the Supreme Lord had told Kardama Muni that this would happen, that your 9 daughters will marry 9 sages. And just as a perfect disciple he's presented himself to be, Kardama Muni also accepts that instruction and makes it happen. And specifically, Brahma mentions to Kardama Muni to get them married according to their temperament and liking, right? So based on the character and the nature of the daughters, to get them married according to that. And this is a very interesting sort of point, which we will leave for discussions when we do the breakout rooms. But it's interesting because, just commenting on that, many times when we look at the traditional way of marriage, the arranged marriage, we often see, at least nowadays, people steer away from it because it's like, well, how can I get married when I don't know the person, right? But even then, we see marriages today based on love marriages, whatever we want to call them. And statistics show that they don't last as well, you know? So, yeah. Then we go on to how Brahma then glorifies the Supreme Lord for his appearance, for his bodily features, for the reason for him to come, which is to spread the Sankhya philosophy, right? And specifically, he goes to Devahuti that what Kapil will do as the Supreme Lord is he will first cut off all her ties to the ignorance, to the doubt, to the illusions she has about family life, about material nature. So first, he will bestow the philosophy onto Devahuti, and then he'll go and preach to the world, which is very similar to what has been mentioned by the Supreme Lord in chapter 21, and also by Kardama Muni to Devahuti earlier on in this chapter. Right? And again, he says that just as Kardama Muni was mentioning how the Supreme Lord will glorify Kardama Muni, Brahma is trying to appease Devahuti here and also say that the Lord will increase your fame, Devahuti, as well as being the mother. So after this little pastime, Brahma, the 4 Kumaras and Narad Muni, they all go back to their planet, and Kardama Muni's just got his daughters married to the sages, and they've gone to their ashrams as well. So now we have the conversation between Kardama Muni and Lord Kapila. I'm just checking time. Okay, we're good for time. Okay. So this is a very nice and interesting section, actually, and just taking a step away from the immediate verses, I think it's worth us just recognizing how amazing the scriptures are. Because when we look at the scriptures, they're all based on conversations, right? Whether it's a Supreme Lord speaking to a devotee or 2 devotees speaking to each other, the whole of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the whole of the Bhagavad Gita, the whole of the Chaitanya Charitamrita is all based on conversations, and sometimes even conversations within conversations. we can appreciate this because many of us on this call are here today because maybe we just care about the studying aspect, right? Reading through the Bhagavatam. But I think many of us are also here because we like studying together in the association of the devotees. We like having those interactions with each other. And that's really key and important for spiritual growth. Because that is primarily what the Bhagavatam, what our scriptures are based on. It's about conversing about this wisdom. So yeah, when practically all of our scriptures are based on a question answer sort of format, then it's it's no doubt that we should also be doing the same thing. We should also be questioning each other. We should also be listening and trying to inquire, understand, share our own realizations, our own understanding of the scriptures. So just a side point that I just wanted to mention. But yeah, so when we go back to this section, so Kardama Muni and Lord Kapila. So Kardama Muni obviously recognizes that Lord Kapila is the Supreme Lord. So now he goes in a somewhat private where he can speak to the Lord, and he's offering his obeisances, and he's expressing his appreciation for what the Lord has done. The Lord's given him the opportunity to receive Kapila as a father, right? So Kapila is the son, and Kardama Muni is the father. It's the Lord that gave that opportunity. And that opportunity is so valuable, so much more valuable for Kardama Muni, because as he's sharing, even yogis, right, those who are performing austerities for many, many lifetimes, it is rare for them to even get the darshan of the Lord, let alone get the Lord in an intimate association like a father-son relationship. And then he's explaining that actually this is nothing but the pastime of the Lord, how the Lord's appearing to increase the honor of the devotees, right? So two aspects of Lord Kapila. One is to increase the honor of the devotees at Kardama Muni devotee, and the other factor was to spread the process of the knowledge of the Sankhya philosophy. And specifically, Krishna or Kapila is described as Bhaktana Manavardhana, he who increases the honor of his devotees. Right? This is a specific phrase that's used. So yeah, as the glorification goes on, then then Kardama Muni, in just one verse at the very end of his appreciation of his glorification, he puts forward his request to the Lord. He goes, he says that, or requests the Lord, can I just renounce now? You know, can I just take my leave? You know, you've fulfilled your promise. 9 daughters have come. I had a wife, and now you've also appeared as you promised. And now I'm ready to renounce. You know, now I'm ready to focus my mind on you. And the Lord also acknowledges and gives that permission based on the fact that scripturally it is also authority, and it was also correct for him to now renounce because he's at that stage of his life. And we can understand that actually when we look at Kardama Muni and Devahuti, they were a householder. They had many, many duties and responsibilities. And yet Kardama Muni wanted to renounce, right? He wanted to renounce his family duties. He had actually completed them because he had promised what he was going to do. And now he's at that stage. So when we look at this, we can understand that there is great importance given in the scriptures for us to follow, which is that we have our 4 stages in life. The brahmachari stage, where we're students, the grihastha ashram, grihastha stage, where we're engaged in family household affairs. But that has to end too. And that has to end so that we take varnapras, which is that we leave the family material ties. And then sannyas, where we completely dedicate ourselves to preaching and focusing on our spiritual life. Many times, those who aren't so learned in the scriptures, who aren't so learned in spiritual life, we get tied up in our family household life so much that even when we're 60, 70 years old, you know, the grandchildren are coming, the great-grandchildren are probably even there. And we take it as our responsibility to help cultivate them, help them grow, which is a very nice and kind thing. But we have to remember that we need to focus on our spiritual path as well. And shastrically speaking, we should be looking to reduce as much as we can. Yes, when the children come, we should be there with them, be present with them, be that, you know, grandmother, grandfather, etc. for them. But we know that, okay, we don't get so bogged down, we don't get so tied up in everything that it becomes our life again, that we go through the same thing that we did with our children, with our children's children. So then the last section is where Kardama Muni actually renounces everything and attains the spiritual world. And it's very nice because we get to see that journey of Kardama Muni, where he's just left the household life. Then what does he do? He takes the Supreme Lord as his only shelter. He travels around, staying strong to his sannyas principles. He fixes his mind on the Supreme Lord, and he becomes purified in that process, so much so that any sort of disturbance from the duality of the world, any sort of agitation that any of us would go through, completely doesn't bother him. He's completely unagitated. He's aloof from all of that agitation. And it's described that he becomes liberated from the conditioned life. And then his purification is so high that he starts seeing everyone with equal vision. And eventually he goes back home, back to Godhead. So when we look at Kardama Muni's renunciation, this chapter, there are many different facets that we can kind of understand, but we can see through Kardama Muni, what we're seeing throughout these chapters is an example of a devotee who is sincerely strong towards his spiritual goals in life. He still engages in family life, right, with Vibhuti, but his focus is one-pointed. His focus is on the instructions of his guru, the path back to Godhead. So even though, as we heard about last week, he has this whole phase where he's got a massive flying palace, right, where he's enjoying with his wife for so many years, but still, once he came to a point where his duties are finished, he was ready. He was ready to renounce. And all that is based on his firm faith in the Lord and in his guru. So that's something we all can take away, is that we're all engaged in some sort of family-oriented life, or if we're not in the Grihastha ashram, maybe we're looking to go into it, or maybe we are, you know, in the ashram, in the brahmachari ashram, and living in the temple. But at some point, there will be something in life that will take our time and energy, which isn't directly Krishna conscious. But we should always keep that in mind, that, okay, my goal is Krishna consciousness. My goal is to go back home, back to Godhead. So whatever I'm doing now is to support that goal. And when I finish my duties for the now, then I focus on that goal again. Hare Krishna. So I'll end there. If there are any questions, comments.
Haribol Prabhuji, Haribol, very nice explanation. I just have a question that those who take initiation, will the guru individually they give any kind of instructions, or it is like in general?
So that depends on the nature of both the relationship and the guru. So many times, depending on the guru's capacity, I guess, you may not have a personal relationship with the guru. And that's okay, because generally when we look at instructions, we think that the instruction is a one-to-one instruction, right? But actually, when we look at the public classes, when we look at general classes from the guru, they're all instructions for us as well, because what the guru will talk about are things that the guru wants to see us develop as his or her disciples also. So it very much depends on the guru, Sima Mataji. But yeah, it also depends on your desire. Like if your desire is to have that personal relationship with that guru, that you can just message him or talk to him one-to-one, you know, then equally you would see, and in a phrase that we do use within ISKCON is to test that relationship before you get initiated, to see how the relationship develops, and if you connect on the level that the guru does. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Pravesh.
Okay, Hare Krishna. Anyone else? I see Harsh Prasannatma Prabhu. Hare Krishna. It's nice to see you after such a long time.
Thank you for nice class. Prabhuji, my question is, we have heard in first time that Kardama Muni took sannyas just after the Grihastha. So my question is, how to if one is not qualified to take one prastha after Grihastha, then should he take one prastha, or should he continue to serve in the Grihastha?
So I missed the last part of that.
If one thinks that he is not qualified to take one prastha, then he should continue in serving the Lord in Grihastha, or he should take one prastha.
So Varnaprastha is actually the stage to prepare for sannyas, right, as we know. So it's that stage where we'll still oftentimes, like I know a Varnaprastha couple, they're still engaged with their wife, etc., but it's very much in the mood of just always just serving, no other attachments, no other relationship. But generally speaking, even change of ashram, we should take in the association and with the guidance of the senior devotees with our guru. Especially something like swapping the Grihastha ashram for the Varnaprastha and sannyas ashrams. We should do it in the guidance. So I'd suggest if anybody's in that situation, then you speak to your seniors, your local seniors, you speak to your Diksha Guru, Siksha Guru, get their guidance on how you should proceed. So, yeah, there's no clear answer to that, probably from my perspective, unless anybody else has. But okay, Subharo Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. It's an excellent class. It delineated pretty much about Guru-Sishya relationships, and it's very wonderful. So I have a question. I'm an aspiring devotee. I'm not yet initiated, but I've been having association with the devotees for the last 5 years in chanting. So as an aspiring devotee, how do we, what's the I mean, you mentioned a word in the previous reply, testing, right? Testing before you accept someone. Like at my stage of life, like in a sense, when we try to explore, I hate to use this word, guru shopping. That's not the right word. I hate to use it. But how do we, what's the process of finding out a guru? Of course, it's Lord's mercy ultimately counts, but could you enlighten us, please?
It's a very, very nice question, actually. It's, I'll be honest, I went through that question many, many times in my journey.
Okay.
But so I can speak a little about it. Like as you are probably already aware, everybody's journey is different to finding their guru. So I can't really share, okay, you know, you do this checklist and then you'll get your guru.
Sure.
But generally speaking, like what practically every devotee that I've spoken to, I myself have experienced this also. When we have that sincere desire to really grow in our spiritual life, and when we sincerely pray specifically to Nityananda Prabhu, who is the Adi Guru, by sincerely praying to Nityananda Prabhu, then the Guru manifests. Now, of course, there's the external aspect where we need to understand, okay, what are we looking for in that relationship, right? Like as one of the devotees was asking earlier, like, do we have what one-to-one sort of instructions, or is it generic only? You might be okay with generic instructions, you know, you might not necessarily need personal association regularly, you know, like face-to-face time or conversations, text message exchanges, etc. You might not need it. So that might not be something that you're thinking of, that, okay, externally, I want the relationship to work like this. But what you might want is that you should be able to be present in person for their classes, you know? So then you'd be thinking, okay, I want my guru to be local to me. So all these external factors also we need to think about. But ultimately, when we're really looking and searching sincerely, then praying to Nityananda Prabhu with that sincerity is key. And also, I definitely underestimated this, but don't ever underestimate the power of the Vaishnava's prayers in helping us find the Guru.
Mm-hmm.
When we go to the Vaishnavas, of course, we're always asking for their blessings, for their mercy. But also we can just put forward that, you know, Prabhu Mataji, like, I really want to take that next step in my spiritual journey. I really want to take shelter of a Guru. So please bless me that I can find and that the Guru manifests himself to me. And ultimately then that's the journey that Krishna's decided for you. That's, yeah, what comes to mind.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Anybody else? Oh, sorry, Prabhu, just one more thing, just whilst we wait for anybody else. In the UK, just as a process-wise, we have a specific process in the UK for initiations as well. So just one thing to bear in mind is that maybe your local congregation also has certain processes. So it's worth investigating that as well. It's more of the technicality side, but obviously, yeah.
Sure, thanks again, Prabhu.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone?
Can I ask you a quick question? Like, who's your Guru Maharaj, Prabhuji?
His Holiness Kandam Kanana Maharaj. So,
Oh, okay.
Kadamba Kanana Maharaj.
Okay.
He's in Vrindavan right now. But...
Thank you.
Is my audio okay?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay. Now it's better. So he was saying that, you know, we usually get like my Guru Maharaj is saying that touch. And
So, Mataji, your voice is a little low.
Okay.
The echo's gone,
Now
but the
it
voice
okay?
is a little low.
Is it okay now?
It's better, yeah. If you can move a bit more closer, then that might be.
Okay. So, like you know, my Guru Maharaj is His Holiness Pakshanga, and generally we get generic instructions, like, you know, because we have, and it comes through our Siksha Gurus basically. Like anything, we don't directly, as ladies, you know, we generally don't directly interact with our Guru Maharaj. Yes, it's okay to write to him, but usually we interact only with our Siksha Gurus who give us the instructions at this some time. So that way it is like more, you know, what I can say, like we don't actually get in touch with our Guru. We hear, you know, about him and our things. So how do we improve, you know, our relationship with him? Even though it wouldn't be like, you know, we won't be doing any what to say about directly.
Yeah. So just because I'm just going to paraphrase the question, Mataji, just because it was a bit difficult to hear for everyone else. So Mataji was talking about how her spiritual master, her guru, she doesn't actually get personal contact with the guru usually. So what the guru's done is assigned, if I'm not mistaken, assigned Shiksha gurus for his disciples, so that if there's any problems or any questions to ask, then the disciples go to the Shiksha gurus and not directly the guru necessarily. So the question is about how to build and develop that relationship with the guru, with the Diksha guru, considering there's no personal relationship or association there. So it's a very nice question. The thing that we often do, and I'm guilty of this myself also, is that there's the Vapo and there's the Vani of the Guru, right? The Vapo is the physical manifestation, right? The body, the physical body. And then the Vani are the instructions of the speech of the Guru. Oftentimes when we think of developing a relationship with somebody, and especially we even bring it to spiritual life, we bring in the aspect that, oh, you know, I don't have association of them because I don't have their Vapu presence, but we don't have that personal face-to-face time or something like that. But actually, all of us on this call are associating with Srila Prabhupada, right? We all are having association. We all are developing our relationship with Srila Prabhupada. But is Srila Prabhupada present in front of us for anyone, right? We're associating with Srila Prabhupada through his books, through his lectures. So when we think about the association of our guru, we can also apply the same thing. The association, the relationship is not based on the Vapul presence because, you know, especially sannyas gurus, they're always traveling around. So it's not possible that we always get their association. And also the guru may wind up their pastimes, right? Like we have Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, Bhakti Charu Maharaj. So many of our ISKCON gurus and even their gurus have left their bodies. But we can still always associate with them by staying close to their Vapul, by constantly, every day, we should make it a point to listen to our guru. Listen to Srila Prabhupada and listen to our guru as much as we can every day. Right? Of course, there's all the other devotees who are wonderful and yeah, very senior to us that we should listen to also. We can always learn from everyone, but we should make it a point that Srila Prabhupada and our guru we always listen to every day, at least something. So in that way, we can stay connected. We can develop our relationship with them. And just because there's a lot of questions on the personal instructions aspect, when we look at our guru's classes, then we can see that every instruction that they're giving in the class is actually for us. Would the guru ever say something in a public class that he wouldn't want his disciples to follow? No, right? He might be speaking generally for everyone, but it equally applies to us. When we read Srila Prabhupada's purports or we listen to Srila Prabhupada's classes, it all applies to us also. So when we associate with the Vani, to develop that relationship with the Guru, to go deeper in our relationship with the Guru, we can also make it a point to meditate on what the Guru is saying. It might be a public class, but there are instructions that the Guru is giving. There's a mood that the Guru is presenting that he wants us as his disciples to also take on. So yeah, hope that helps. Gurumaya Mataji. Thank you, Mataji. Any other questions, comments? Okay, so okay,
I have.
Hema Mataji.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead, Seema Mataji.
Prabhu, yesterday I was reading the fourth canto, 9th chapter, the discussion between the talk between Lord Shiva and Sati. And there in the Srila Prabhupada's purport, it is been mentioned about the woman's nature, that woman is a basic principle of material enjoyment. So how can I understand it? Prabhuji, can you
Controversial
explain?
point. No, so generally when we see these statements, we can, there's multiple levels to it, but just because I think that's going to come up in a later week, so I'll just comment on it slightly. Let me just check. I believe it was 1-4, yeah. So in week 23, it'll be discussed more. Yeah. So just sorry, not week 23, week 18, sorry. But just generally, like a simple way that we can see it is that a woman is material for a man and a man is material for a woman. The idea here is just generally speaking that when we look at the material energy, it's based, our desire, if we're not Krishna conscious, our desire is based on enjoyment. So what is naturally the enjoyment for a woman? It's a man. What's the natural enjoyment for a man? It's a woman. So we can reconcile it on one level like that, but there are multiple levels as well. I'd rather let it come to that section, if that's okay, Mataji, because there are many different layers to that sort of question as well.
Sure, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Hemi Mataji?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I'm a little bit confused about this. So different ashramas, it sounds like when you hear or read, it does it, it looks like it's more applicable to a man, like he goes to sannyas and, you know, this vanaprastha, and here also Devahuti is left behind. So how do you, how do I understand it as a woman?
So the 4 ashramas, brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyas. Yeah, generally speaking, yes, they're more applicable to males. Traditionally speaking, that comes from the fact that if we go back, you know, in the Vedic times, then what would happen? The female daughters, they'd be, you know, learning all the household affairs, and the son would be the one who goes and studies the Vedas, goes and studies the material arts so that they can earn a living. So when it comes to applying the ashrams for females, generally speaking, at least in the way I understand modern sort of ISKCON, the way the Vedic tradition is coming, is you still have that brahmacharini sort of ashram, right? So there's brahmachari for males and then brahmacharini for females. So that's still there because the idea of that ashram is studying, is growing and cultivating for getting ready for the next ashram. So then you would also enter the grihastha ashram. In Varnaprastha, the way Varnaprastha works is that the husband and wife can go together. It's a mutual choice whether they go together or not. So they can go together. And that's the idea of Varnaprastha. Because the idea is that you slowly learn to cut the ties with the family so that you're ready to take sannyas. And when the husband goes for sannyas, the woman would usually stay at home under the shelter and the care of the family. And that comes down to the nature of the protection side, that females generally, as a natural sort of aspect, females generally need protection. So the idea is that they stay under the protection of family, but their focus is also just as a sannyasi. They're fully focused on Krishna consciousness. They're fully focused on their spiritual life. It's just that they're staying at home instead of going out and, you know, getting hit by the different weather changes and everything else like that. Because the austerity aspect is something that the male body is much more, it's built more for austerity in that sense, from the external sense. Harshpasanatma Prabhu, I don't know if your point was related to this or if it was a separate question.
Yes, one separate.
Can you pull the mic up, Prabhu?
Prabhuji, now is clear. Prabhuji, my question is, I heard in the lectures that devotion to the Supreme Lord is independent of the varnas and ashram. Means it is beyond the varna or ashram. At one side we hear this, and at another side we hear the example of Kardama Muni that he has to take the sannyas ashram or sannyas order of life. So how to understand these two things? Means he has to attain the Supreme Lord, so he took the sannyas. At one side we hear that the devotion is independent of the varna. So how to
Okay, I'll come to that question. Himimataji, does that answer the question that you had?
Yes, Prabhuji. So just to follow up so in terms of, I don't know if the benefit is the right word, in terms of what the goal is for the husband and wife, what husband does by going away and what the wife accomplishes at home, is the destination is the same and it is equally accomplished in these two different circumstances.
Yes, the destination is always the same, to attain this Supreme Personality of Godhead's association in the end. It's just, yeah, different paths. The only slight difference with the sannyas ashram is that the focus is also on preaching, right? But with if you're staying at home, you know, as the woman, it's not that you don't preach. You also preach, but obviously if you're staying at home, then it's more localized, right? So you're cultivating, which is actually a much greater service than just doing platform preaching, as we call it, which is going and, you know, just attracting everyone. So yeah, both have the goal is the same, but it's just the means to attain it is slightly different. So just going back to Harsh Prasanatma's Prabhu's question. So yes, Krishna consciousness, spiritual life is beyond all the varnas, beyond all the ashramas. If you were fully Krishna conscious, then you could be in any situation of life, whether you're in the varnashram system or not, and that's okay. But the problem we have is that all of us have a conditioned nature, right? I cannot put my hand up to my question of, are you 100% Krishna conscious? I can't put my hand up on that. And I don't think anyone, if you do put your hand up on that, then please do message me so I can find out, get your association on that. But the point of the varnashram system is that it stabilizes us based on our nature, based on our temperament, based on our likings, so that it's more conducive to practicing spiritual life. So you will see many brahmacharis or brahmacharinis even that don't get married, right? They don't enter the grihastha. And that's okay, because the idea is what is suitable to their nature, right? So for example, in London, we actually have somebody who Harshpasana Prabhu you recognize as Suttapa Prabhu. One person Prabhu and I would talk about, a devotee. But he accepted sannyas. He was a brahmachari and he accepted sannyas. And now he's Swayam Bhagwan Keshav Maharaj. He skipped the grihastha ashram altogether because his nature is inclined towards that sort of mood, right? So when we look at the varnashram system, it's based on our nature, on our temperament, on our liking, but we have to be situated in an ashram and it with specific varnas qualities for ourselves, so that it's conducive to Krishna consciousness. If we're inclined towards getting married, but we're staying in the brahmachari ashram, what's going to happen? Instead of focusing on being a brahmachari, practicing Krishna consciousness, whenever a Mataji comes into the temple, then we'll start thinking, like our mind will start being diverted towards them. Or similarly for Matajis, like if you're attracted to the grihastha ashram, then naturally you'll find ways for that attraction to manifest in our life. But if we're saying, no, I want to stay brahmachari, but actually we're inclined towards it, then all that's going to happen is our own mindset is going to become more difficult to deal with. So that's the idea. The idea is to be stable and well situated in our mind, in our external circumstance, so that we can practice Krishna consciousness better. But if we were perfectly Krishna conscious, then it doesn't matter where we're situated. Because, as you've mentioned, Krishna consciousness is above all varnas, all ashramas. So yes, thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Pradhananda Prabhu?
Then with Pranam Prabhuji, am I audible everywhere? I'm
yes.
somewhere now. Okay, thank you very much. I'm just going to narrate some of my realization. I don't have a question. See, teachings of Rushabdev Maharaj in the 5th canto. He says, everything you do in this world is ultimately futile. Parabhavastavad abodhijato yavan najikyasatatmatat. Okay, so whether you're a male or female, ultimately we know that we are spirit soul, and we have to realize that our nitya dharma, as against naimittic dharma, is to become servant of Lord Sri Krishna's service like that. Okay, so what I have done in my life, I got initiated long back in 1984. I'm 70 now. And I have always followed Rushabdev Maharaj's teaching, which says, Yeva maisya kruta saurudartha jane sudeham vartikesu gruhe yavad arthasya loke. How much am I involved with my wife and children and my soul? That is as much as salt we put in the food, all right? Not more, not less. And slowly over the years, this policy of chanting and following sadhu sang and, regulation, although broken, Narad Muni has said that there is no problem even if you keep on falling down. He says, Bhajan lapakvatu patet taduyadi. All right. So, okay, I have fallen so many times, but I kept in sadhu sang. I have always kept in touch with Radha Govind Swami, who is my Siksha Guru. And, I hear his lectures every day. This keeps me stable at my mind. I'm a physician by my profession, so I always remember the QRS complex on electrocardiogram. So this is isoelectric line, and it doesn't allow that PQR. And then I keep my mind keeping in Krishna's life. And this helps, This helps only in one thing, that, I'm able to do some little portion of Srila Prabhupada's mission of distributing small books to people XYZ, like that. And we have some small congregation in Las Vegas for last 20 years or so. So we are enjoying Krishna conscious life. And I'm not worried that whether I'm in one press, I would do sannyas, nothing doing. I'm doing a little service. Bhagavan Krishna has promised, Neha Bikramana Pratyavayana Vidyada. He will take care of me, So this is what I feel. And I feel very blissful about it, So that's what I just wanted to contribute little like that. Thank you very much. You're an excellent association today, probably. And as you said that, nobody's 100%. And if I was 100%, I would give you my phone number. I'm not. Like that. It's excellent sadhu sang today, Prabhuji. And done with pranam. Hari Bol.
Thank you, Prabhu. That's amazing. You should be sitting here. You should be the one giving class, Prabhu. You're 40, almost 40 years initiated.
Yeah.
I have to speak to Prasadna Prabhu.
That's, Bhagavan Krishna's mercy is like that. And Radha Govind Swami has told that, when the sun sets in the west, it is asking, who is going to do my job now for 12 hours next? Then nobody came, and then a small key lamp came. He says, Prabhuji, I'm not like Prabhupada like you. I'll just little room. I'll just light little room in my house here and to my friends here. If I do that, Lord Krishna will be pleased because Prabhupada is pleased. Yasya prasadat bhavat prasad. So that's what I'm doing like that. And I feel, and I think, everybody, like Amy Mataji was asking, man or woman. No, we're not man and woman. Right? And everything is naimittic dharma you have to do. But real dharma is nitya dharma. After, I'm attending a funeral night in Charlotte, Carolina. But, he was a physician and he just passed away within few moments in front of his family life. And that's how labile is our life, Kamala Jalaka and Jivana Talamala. So like that, if we take this perspective, keep in sadhu sang and do Bhagavan Krishna's service to Prabhupada's service, we'll get the best in our lives. Thank you very much again for allowing me to speak, Prabhuji. Then pranam. All glories to Sri Prabhupada.
All glories to Sri Prabhupada. Okay, I'm conscious of time. Prasadna Prabhu is going to be my case. So what we do now, thinking, we have 15. Okay, we'll do breakout rooms, but what I'll do is I'll just make it 3 groups of 5, and I'll just give 3 questions. So all related to our class. And what I'll do is just conscious of time. So maybe if we just do discussions for 5 minutes, is that enough for everyone? Or are we okay to go a bit longer? Okay. Okay, I'll do this one. Okay, so just put questions in chat. Now, please forgive me. This is the first time I'm going to be doing breakout rooms for everyone. So let me just see if this works. Okay, so I'm just going to give some initial names to numbers to devotees with the questions.
Could you give us little more than 5 minutes? I think looking at the questions, we need a little more time.
Okay, are we okay to go on a bit longer? I'm just conscious of the time as well.
Maybe just 7 to 10 minutes, maybe.
Okay, yeah, we can do that. We can do that. So, okay, so I do 8 minutes. Okay. So I'm just putting names in chat as well, because these are the first people that come up in the groups. So if you just take, so if Himi Mataji, you just take question 1, so discuss various reasons why the Lord appears in different incarnations. All these questions are based on this chapter, by the way, so you might be able to get help from the verses. Second one, if Harsh Prasanatma Prabhu, if your group looks at, give a comparison of the traditional style of marriage and modern day marriage, what are the pros and cons of modern day marriages? And then if Gunamai Radhika Mataji's group, you look at, list and discuss the roles and responsibilities of devotee parents, and that'd be good. So, yep. Is everybody okay if I just bring out the breakout rooms? Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think everybody's back. I'm sorry, I know that was not a lot of time, but hopefully you had good discussions. Okay, shall we just do quick rounds, like maybe 2-3 points each from each group? If somebody from group 1 would like to share.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, we had Prahladanan Prabhuji, Vrija, sorry, I'll say this name wrong, sorry, Vrija Dasi Mataji and Thane Rasika Siromani Das Prabhuji and myself. So we had a quick discussion, but was very interesting. So our question was why Lord takes incarnations in this world. So we discussed that he does that. Like Lord can incarnate in different forms. He can come as human or animal or mixed form, like he did, Kurma avatar, Matsya avatar, and Narsimha avatar. So he can do in different formats. But he comes here to teach us, for teaching for one thing, that to bring the devotees to his service is one of the reasons he does that. He came to Prahlad Maharaj in the Narsingh avatar, and then that kind of inspires us to sort of start devotion at a young life, and also to sort of care for others at the same time, like practice at a young age and show caring for others. We also discussed that he gives, like based on today's class, he comes to give pleasure to his devotee, like he came in the womb of Mother Devuti voluntarily, just so that he can, he chooses his parents, and then he to glorify them to this world. And also we also discussed that he comes to enjoy the rasa himself, because he can't get that rasa in Golok Vrindavan. Like for example, he comes to Devaki Mata or Rohini or to Devahuti Mata as a family member or as a child, and as family member to enjoy that rasa. And Mataji also described that he gets the same rasa, say he can't fight there, so to fight Kansa and to Hiranyakashipu, those things he can enjoy only by taking that incarnation and in this material world. And Prabhuji also, Radhan Prabhuji also mentioned that the shloka yada yada hi dharmasya glani bharati bharata. So he comes to destroy the demons and bring sort of devotion and normalcy to the world. And finally, the Prabhuji also mentioned about the rasa which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted, the mood of Radharani, to enjoy what Radharani as a devotee felt towards Krishna, to enjoy that. That is the prakriya rasa, he said, is what he wanted to enjoy, which he can only enjoy in this material world, and came as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for that reason. So that's in short what we came up with, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Jay, that's a lot. That's a lot in 7 minutes, 8 minutes, whatever it was now. But no, yeah, that's really amazing points. And I think one thing, just to comment, that whole rasa aspect for why Krishna appears, it's quite beautiful if you think about it. Like the Lord is up in Goloka Vrindavan, where he's got so many devotees with him, enjoying all these rasas with them, and yet he comes down for our pleasure to enjoy those rasas, for his pleasure to enjoy the rasa with his demons. Like, who are these demons anyway? They're associates of the Lord in the end. So he makes them demons so that he can come down, enjoy these pastimes. So it's very beautiful. Second group, so Harsh Prasanna Prabhu, your group? Anybody from? It doesn't have to be the person that I've said the name of that has to share, by the way. Anybody from the group can.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, can you hear me? So I'm part of the second group. Harsh Prabhu was there and Rani Mataji. So I just want to read the question for the benefit of others. So give a comparison of the traditional style of marriage and the modern day marriage. What are the pros and cons of the modern day marriage? So what we discussed is broadly into 3 categories. One is marriages among the devotees or the so-called Krishna consciousness on the Krishna consciousness platform. Second is the so-called arranged marriage. or the traditional marriage, so to speak, for lack of a better term. And the third one is the modern day marriage. So the broad definition, since we didn't want to go into so much details, the one thing, it came to my mind is this, like dharma svanseta pumsam visvakshena kathasahu notpatyadi atiratam sramahe vihe kehabalam. I mean, the occupational activities a man performs according to his own positions are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead. So you spoke in the class, and also a lot of conversation about the questions about different varnas and ashramas. So marriage is one phase of the life, right? So there is a duty associated with this, occupational duties, when you do a marriage thing. So if you go by truly scriptural reference point of view, so the marriages in Krishna consciousness platform among the devotees is, to keep Krishna in the center and to serve the Lord and serve the Guru, follow the, like what you said, carry the instructions in the heart of the, the person, both husband and wife, and then also serve the Vaishnavas and bring up children or in a Krishna consciousness way. So your whole dedication is keeping Krishna in the center. That is the best kind of a marriage, if you're lucky, and if our parents have been in Krishna consciousness, if Lord blesses us, we would be getting onto that kind of platform, right? Whereas in the second instance of arranged marriage, or the so-called traditional marriage, so I gave that example, like when you want to fight with somebody, right? So a physical fight or an argument or something like that, you choose a partner who's at least a similar level. You can't go and argue with a Nobel laureate. And you can also go and fight with a small, like a petty kind of an animal or something. So you have to have at a similar platform. So on the traditional marriage, these aspects were looked upon. They look at also what you call the horoscope matching with the compatibility. So people look at it from a physical, social, plus also from an horoscope matching point of view, whether mutual compatibility is there. That's how the traditional marriages used to happen. At the same time, when there is an issue after traditionally getting married, the parents and relatives, all the community is there to support you. But so this is the view of this. But even then, in a traditional marriage, you may lack. We have all. I have been traditionally married, but mercy of the Lord, I've come onto Krishna consciousness platform. But it doesn't happen all the time for traditional marriage. So traditional marriage is also not the best, but better than the modern day marriage. So the modern day marriage is love at first sight and divorce at the first fight, right? That's what the thing is. So what happens is, like, you fall for the beauty, external beauty, or maybe sometimes intellectual. I do not know whether it works, but generally, like what you said, man and woman, when you gave a definition, it's a material, right? So in the modern day marriage, you may not have a social support. So it's just purely only on lust. So, and you don't completely understand what their inner strengths, weakness, and other things. So at the earliest opportunity, you tend to fight, and then you show superiority one compared to another. So that's why you see a lot of divorces in India also now. So these are the things what we could think of in the 7 minutes, probably. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. That's very nice. Yeah, just one thing I want to add is that when I'm glad you raised that point about the traditional, right? Because there's actually two elements of traditional. One is traditional from a Vedic standpoint, and one is the way we've perceived traditional in terms of at least the last, I don't know, so many generations. The true traditional aspect, where the arranged marriage really comes from, is the Vedic culture, which is based on spiritual principles, looking at the bodily compatibility, the mental compatibility, intellectual, as well as the spiritual compatibility. So actually horoscope matching, astrology as we term it, is actually a Vedic thing, which is very useful to, going back to what Harsh Prasanna Prabhu was saying. If the husband and wife have certain characteristics which are not conducive to a relationship, then they get flagged up. So nowadays, what we tend to do is that even in those so-called love marriages, right, or these like is it love arranged, or like, I don't know what the term is, but where it's mutual consent, but based on families sort of introductions and stuff, what tends to happen is that we're trying to find these qualities, right? These internal qualities that you're talking about, the characteristics, etc. But because it's based on perception, on how we come across, when we meet what's coming across, we can understand that there's going to be some artificiality in there because we're trying to please the other person. But the horoscope takes that out. So yeah, that's definitely there. So no, it's nice. But yeah, of course, if you're going to get horoscopes matched, then you need somebody who is pakka, who is proper, not just any sort of person. But it's rare these days, to be fair, to find. But no, so that's a very nice point. So yeah, Krishna conscious marriages are primarily based on developing the spiritual aspect, putting Krishna in the center, as you said. But we shouldn't neglect the other aspects, right? We shouldn't neglect the nature and the tendencies of the boy and the girl. So oftentimes it comes up that, oh, it doesn't matter, you know, two devotees can get married because they're devotees. But that temperament is there because I don't know about anybody who's on this call who's got recently married or something to a devotee, you still argue in the marriage. That's a given. My Guru Maharaj once said, I think he quoted Srila Prabhupada or one of the acharyas, that one of the reasons to enter marriage is because you want somebody to fight with, you know. So so Krishna has that rasa, which is why he has demons and he comes down to fight the demons. We also, you know, take after Krishna and we want to fight also. But so yeah. Okay, third group, was that Gunamayi Mataji, I think? Yeah, Gunamayi Mataji's group. We can't hear you if you're speaking, Gunamayi Mataji. Would anybody else from the group like to speak?
Okay, Hare Krishna. I'm Rachna. I'm in the same group. In our group were Seema Mataji, Gunamayi Mataji, and one more lady.
I think Rangadevi Mataji, I think.
Yes, Rangadevi, yes, Mataji and myself. And our question was the roles and responsibility of responsibility of devotee parents. So some of the points are that for beginners, if they can have Garbhadan Samskara, that's very good start. That, you know, from the womb only the child is having good samskaras, and the mother can be reading Srimad Bhagavatam in the you know, when she's pregnant, and the parents should be very respectful towards each other. They should you know, set a good example instead of just instructing the children, and the children can be given very good association with devotee children, so that they can have again Krishna conscious samskaras from childhood. They can, you know, be in some schools like Gopal school, you know, like there are programs for children where they can be, you know, introduced to arts and crafts and learning mantras and all that, so that they can, you know, be having those impressions being put in them when they are very young, you know. And the parents, they just really have to raise them to be Krishna conscious, and to understand that life is not about just you know, just going through, you know, all your different age groups and, you know, achieving material things, but even having the understanding that human birth is rare, and that we have to you know, not miss this chance, otherwise we will be again back in the cycle of life and death, and, you know, there's no coming out of that cycle. So you know, to really make Krishna the center, if parents can really make children have the confidence and faith and fearlessness in having that strong faith and determination that yes, Krishna will protect me. If I'm on the right path, then Lord will protect me. So it's the parents' responsibility to give the children that faith, and it really comes down to just very good, they should really conduct themselves with great responsibility, and like I said, they should be very respectful towards each other and not take each other for granted. And the children learn more from what they see instead of what they are told, so yes, that's it. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, very nice. Rangadevi Mataji, would you like to add anything?
Yes, Prabhuji. One thing I would like to reiterate is we have to wean the children away from gadgets, from screen time. So at least, this is tried and tested over the years. That what I have done with my children, and I am a teacher, so I have told hundreds of students, and parents have been very successful. In fact, their children also have come to me for the same guidance, which I would like to tell everyone is that before sleeping, half an hour before sleeping, all screen time should be stopped and it should be family time. This is a time when mothers or fathers or anyone in the family, like we have a huge joint family, my own family. So anyone takes the responsibility of sitting together and narrating one story from Krishna book when the children are very young, and when they grow up, then we discuss from the Srimad Bhagavatam, or we discuss one shloka of Bhagavad Gita. Second thing that I have done with my children and with my grandchildren also, that is during the Damodar month, that is my grandchildren also have started learning the Damodar Ashtakam, because all morning aartis, Mangal Aarti, children may not be there, but Sandhya Aarti children will be there with us. So entire family or parents or maybe single family, but at least the Sandhya Aarti, make it a point that children are there when we do the Aarti, so that they learn the shlokas and they get into the habit of praying. Once they get into the habit of connecting with Krishna or with the Supreme, then they get into the habit of narrating whatever they have difficulties in life with their parents or discussing with their superiors, and they never miss, they try not to stray. Hare Krishna.
And Rangadevi Mataji said another very good point, that we should feed them very good prasadam and they should love Krishna prasadam.
Yes, it should be always cooked, and children should be there with us when we are cooking prasadam. So they learn the habit of offering prasadam to the Lord, offering a bhoga to the Lord and eating only prasadam. So once they eat what is cooked by in the house, so that sanskar goes into them, and then definitely when they grow up, they will. My daughter also gives the same thing to her children. So naturally, it is passed on through generations.
Those are wonderful points. It's yeah. Cultivating kids in Krishna consciousness can be fun for the kids as well. It doesn't have to be just, get them to sit down, read a book. But yeah, no, it's nice. It's nice. Really, really, really good points. So thank you. But yeah, as parents, oftentimes we do think that, especially if we have non-devotee children, or, we're just coming into Krishna consciousness or something, that the tendency is that we want the best for our children. But actually in the scriptures, it's described that we shouldn't take the responsibility of being a father, a mother, or guru, anything like that, any position of responsibility for somebody else, if we can't take them back, if we can't give them the guidance, the direction on how to go back to Krishna. Because ultimately, as Matajis have mentioned, that is the goal of life. And we have to know how to mold them in a way that helps them along that path. So yeah, it's very nice, and wonderful points as well around like the prasadam, around the no screen time. So yeah, it's really, really, really nice to also see somebody who's practicing in that way also, from a grandmother as well, not even just a parent, but a grandmother who's helping cultivate her kids and her kids' kids. So it's nice. Amazing. Okay, I am conscious that we are 16 minutes over. Thank you everyone for staying. Is there any last comments or anything anybody would like to share?
Prabhuji, we'd like to have more of your association. Try to come regular to our classes and enlighten us.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much.
I-
Dandavata, ma'am.
Thank you very
I'm
much
nobody
for
who's
everything.
enlightening. Sorry. But yeah, I'm just repeating what I've heard, to be honest. So I don't take any credit for it.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Prabhuji, Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
Thank you, Haribol.
Panchakalpatarubhishcha kripa sindhuveva cha
Vasudevaya cha
patitanam
patitanam
pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Namo namaha.
Hare Krishna, and thank you again for everyone joining. And yeah, hopefully we shall see each other soon.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Prabhuji.